Hello, welcome to another episode of the Horror Vision Presents Elements of Horror. I am Sean.
And I'm John.
And I'm Missy.
And I'm Ray.
And we are going to talk about, well, John, this is your pick. So, what are we talking about and why?
We are talking about Gerald Kargl's 1983 Austrian serial killer horror film, Angst, or Angst, if you will.
So, what made you pick this movie?
Because it's kind of disturbing, and it is a film that has influenced so many horror filmmakers, and it's also sort of kind of one of those films that's part of horror film lore. It's like you kind of hear about it, you hear people rank it as like sort of disturbed amongst the most disturbing of Euro horror films, and also emblematic of a lot of Euro horror films that came out of the 1980s that feel a lot like krautrock influenced in so many ways.
I definitely see that.
And there's so many other films that have angst DNA all over it. I mean, you films like Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, or Lars von Trier's The House That Jack Built, just sort of has angst written all over it.
Interesting. I know I was reading about this and I saw Zach Krieger, who did Barbarian, said that the whole flashback sequence with Richard Brake was basically inspired by this movie, and it made perfect sense. Like as soon as I watched this movie after reading that, I was like, I get that 100%. When did you first see this movie, John?
I saw this film, oh gosh, kind of late. I saw it, I want to say 2017 is when I saw it. And I remember renting it from I was living in Seattle at the time, and I remember renting it from Scarecrow Video. Shout out to Scarecrow. And I did it with a friend of mine as a double feature with Andrei Zavlovsky's Possession.
Oh
Oh
wow.
wow!
And yeah, we start with Angst, and then we did Possession, and then he was holding on to a wine glass, and it just right in the middle of Possession. I think all the tension had been building up so long, the glass just shattered. He just like
Oh
had
wow.
shattered, like the glass
That's
just
awesome.
wine and glass shards just flying everywhere.
Oh my God. I feel like that is a perfect metaphor for possession.
I feel like it's a perfect metaphor for that evening.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hell of a double feature.
Oh yeah, but that double feature, and then the following night I made him totally like not a horror film, but disturbing nevertheless. I made him watch Elem Klimov's Come and See, the also from the 1980s, the World War II Belarusian film.
Oh man. Okay. Yeah, that's one I've heard about, and I have not heard much because I feel like I was like, okay, I don't want to know anything else about that. I'm good.
It's one of those films that everyone has to see once, and once is good enough, but it stays with you, and it's probably like it's one of the best movies ever made, but it's
Oh
just like,
wow.
yeah, you don't need to watch it more than once, really. Well, maybe you do, but yeah.
I'll be building up my courage to watch it once, probably for the rest of my life. But we did watch Angst. And Ray, you had actually this
Seen it
you
before.
watched this a year or two ago wasn't this on Shudder for a brief period of time?
It was for on settle for quite a while. I saw it. I think back during COVID, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just it was on there. It was one of those things that was always on there. It was on their essentials list. So I was like, okay, and I'd kind of worked through some of the others that were on there, and I thought one day, like, well, let's just check this out, and yeah, I did.
Did you have any preconceived ideas about it?
I just knew it was a serial killer film, but I didn't know anything beyond that. Like I hadn't heard a lot about it and I didn't read up on it, and I just knew it was German. Um and so once I started watching it, like the documentary almost style of it like was different, was something I wasn't expecting. Um Also the inner dialogue as dialogue for the entire film was unusual, and I just was kind of thrown by it. And I don't know, like I kind of, it doesn't feel like a movie per se. It's so much more as like almost like just a day in the life of a serial killer.
I feel like it is giving him a bit much credit to call him a serial killer because he's a pretty
Like, yeah.
ineffective.
Yeah, he's kind of a
He's
fuck
not
up.
very good at his job.
That's true. That's true. That's true. They're just a sadist. They're just a sadistic killer. They're just a sadistic killer.
I feel like I think I had a preconceived notion because I feel like Tori from the show had referenced this as in a way like when she references uber disturbing movies.
I think you're right.
I feel like that and something else, some other knowledge I don't know where it came from. I was afraid of it. I remember seeing it on Shudder. I was like, eh. And I mean, I was like that with Henry Port. I wouldn't still not have seen Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer had Joe Bob not shown it a couple years ago. I was like, you know what? With the interruptions, I think it'll be okay. And it was. I I'm happy I waited. Apparently I also like left the room to get a beer during like one of the most disturbing scenes because when I came back, Kirsten's like, Jesus Christ. And I was like, oh, well, okay, well, I guess I lucked out
What did
there.
you walk
Sorry.
out on? What did you miss?
Don't they suffocate people with bags or some shit?
Oh
Whatever that
yeah.
murder is, I
Yeah.
missed it
Yeah.
almost entirely. So, I was like, oh, sorry.
Have you ever seen Man Bites Dog?
No, that's another one I have a
That's
vague
the French one.
inkling.
I have not seen it.
Yeah, it's essentially it's like Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer meets This Is Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a reality TV crew just follows this serial killer around, and this isn't really much of a spoiler. It's just the best thing happens like where they run into a rival serial killer being followed around by a rival film crew, and
Oh,
then the
now I
film
feel like
crew
I gotta see it.
just stops to fight each other.
Is it a comedy?
It's a dark comedy.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Missy, so you knew nothing about this movie, right? You had actually, when
Nope.
John referenced this, because John, you had said, I'm either going to choose Climax by Gaspar Noé or I'm going to choose Angst. And then I think Missy, you had them mixed and thought Gaspar Noé Irreversible. So you were worried when you watched this the other day
I
that
was
you were watching Irreversible, right?
right. And I'm like, I'm not very squeamish or anything. In fact, when I watch this, I'm like, oh, not only is it not the movie that I was afraid of, this wasn't that bad. Like I didn't find it. I mean, it's disturbing, but I like movies about true crime and serial killers and whatnot. Like it doesn't show all that much. It wasn't that bad. So I did not really know anything about it. Watched it for the first time the other day and was immediately drawn in by the camera. It I really enjoyed this movie. It ended like the coolest use of point of view camera that I've seen. And I like to ride movies. Usually that can only happen if I bond with a character and I hate this guy. But this is the first time I've ever ridden a movie where it was all carried by the way the camera moved and the cinematography and the fact that we're listening to his inner monologue. There's almost no dialogue in the movie except for him, and I thought that was really cool, and I was glad to see something really different that I knew very little about. So at first I was nervous about it, and I ended up being glad that I watched it.
I would second that. I was not prepared for it's a piss take. That's how I read the whole fucking movie is it's just a big piss take on pretentious overly serious self-involved gothy fucking like I feel like Sprockets took influence from this that old Saturday Night Live skit with Mike Myers where he was like the German, this is the time on Sprockets when and there was like a thing where it's like Germany's most disturbing home videos, look a man gets kicked in the testicles and vomits and I feel like there's 80s Germany, there's that kind of vibe because of krautrock and goth rock and all this shit happening and very like pretentious and I feel like this is just making fun of those people. And I mean, the guy is a fucking idiot. I mean, like first of all, the the opening, you get the opening murder, and then you get a narrator that tells all about what happened to him because of the murder. And the murder's not I mean, it's disturbing, like theoretically, but there's nothing visually disturbing about it whatsoever. And I, I felt like after the kind of that narrator, it sounds like a professor, like examining this case or like, positing this footage for his class of abnormal psych or something. Then the guy's inner monologue, I just wish there was no inner monologue at all. I wish there was nothing but the music and like no other and no dialogue or voice at all because I felt like the guy just kept talking about how all of his problems and what made him the way he was. And it sounded like those pretentious gothy, like, you know, and I just was like, at one point, I'm like, shut the fuck up, jeez. And he was so ineffective at doing what, and then of course the rub is right when he actually does kill the next person, the only other person he kills. Well, no, that's not true. He does manage to kill.
He kills a couple people.
He does manage to kill all three of these people, but it really feels like he only kills the one. But that's a pretty grim showstopper. Like that's pretty visceral, right?
Oh, the last one.
Mhm.
Well, the girl,
Yeah.
right, the blonde,
Yeah.
and I mean that's like wow, yeah, the last one,
Yeah,
Multiple stabbings, drink her blood, fuck her corpse.
yeah, but
yeah, just like but even just before that, it's like he's trying to tie her up and like the grandma is just like or the mom is just like in the corner just like watching, like what the hell are these people doing? Like who's this guy just running back and forth and she doesn't really even try hard to get out,
no.
Well, and he ties her up in the weirdest way possible. Like he ties her foot to a doorknob with like pantyhose or something.
So weird. He makes so many poor choices as a fucking killer. Just I I just he was just constantly like tripping and falling and running and like I was just like, bro, like just think before you move and you will be so much better at your job. When he drowns the handicapped guy, I mean, I was like, this is a fucking comedy. And so it's a weird tone because I feel like I stand by my assessment. I might be wrong. I feel like it's intentionally a fucking dark comedy, but the tone is weird because then they're like, oh, but wait, for like 3 minutes, it's going to be really fucking not a comedy, and then it's comedy again.
And then go back to it.
And don't forget this was banned in the UK. This was a this film was a video video nasty.
Okay.
Yeah, this was a video nasty. And speaking of Climax, Angst makes a cameo appearance in Climax as one of the VHS tapes. On top
Yes,
of the
that's true. I forgot about that.
yeah, and those are all like films that were video nasties.
Yeah, that's
and,
right.
And because that was what Gaspar Noé like draws a lot of his inspiration on was these old video nasty films and which also includes of course like really really disturbing Italian zombie films like Cannibal Ferox, but and other films from the United States. But yeah, this was a video nasty that inspired a lot of people, and yet it's just so it from the get-go it promises you to be like the most disturbing thing ever, and then once he first attempts to strangle a taxi driver, and that fails. And then
But it's too late.
he just goes running through. He just books it through the woods and finds this abandoned house. He breaks in such a very clumsy way, and then and he gets and then the first person to be the first the way his cover is initially blown is the family Dotson just like goes up the stairs and just locates him.
Mhm.
And the whole time you're just kind of wondering, it's like, I'm really disturbed and freaked out by what's happening, but like, I don't know why. And, you're not sure, like, it doesn't kind of give you that sort of satisfaction that like, a true dyed in the wool video nasty would.
I could definitely see that. And I watched it
can
on
too.
Mubi. And
Okay.
Okay.
so I don't know about it's on Tubi and it's on Mubi. Wow, look at that. I didn't even
Mhm.
realize that was going to work out like that. But
Well, at least with Mubi, you're not getting commercials for Viagra.
right. Well,
It's
no
true.
commercials, right? So they have like a $1 for 3 month deal right now. So anybody that wants to check that out. But
It's good.
beforehand, there is a warning about animal violence, sexual assault, yada yada yada. And so I will say I was worried about that fucking Dotson
I was very worried
for the
about
whole
that dog.
movie, right? But I didn't feel like there was animal violence, or I don't really
No.
what we saw. I don't know. Like he talks about all these things, but we don't
Right.
actually see them. And as far as like Ray brought up, like the corpse fucking, he doesn't actually like he doesn't. It's like he dry humps her
Right.
corpse
They
with
don't
her
really show
clothes
anything.
on or something. Like it's not. It's almost. I don't want to say it's comical, but
It
it's just.
is. It is. It is. It's ineffectual because, like, the reason I say corpse. Well, okay, it's clothed corpse fucking, if you want to call it that. Because
A
I mean,
subgenre, if you will.
subgenre,
A
if you will.
subgenre of corpse fucking.
He took his own pants down, but you don't see like her clothes aren't disheveled in a way that like indicates that like he actually got to any vital parts to do said action. So he just was like humping the outside of her. And then there's also that moment too, later on when he's moving the mother's body and he's dragging it through the house and the dialogue is it excites me to have the bodies with me. It excites me that they'll be there. And then he like it almost overcomes me, and then he just stands there and he's like, oh,
Oh
and he's
yeah,
just
that's right.
shaking and I think it's an indication of he's just coming in his pants from the excitement of having these dead bodies in the trunk with him as he's traveling, I guess, to go murder more people. Which I think the understanding is from the dialogue is that he's going to go out and before he murders anyone, show them the dead bodies and be like, check out my work. And then when they become terrified, that's when he'll kill them.
Well, he talks about linking the new victims to
Yeah.
this, so like tying them or something to terrify them. But I
Yes.
mean, I really have a hard time taking this guy seriously. I don't know. I mean, I just he does the actor does a fucking outstanding job. I'm not criticizing the performance at all. And like I said, I'm reading this as what the movie intended. So I think that I thought it was very, very well done. So I'm not making fun of the movie in any regard. I just was so expecting Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer or worse, and did I just
That's
don't
not what
feel
this
like
is.
no, that's not what this is, in my opinion. I just found a lot of it bewilderingly
Humorous.
comical. Yeah.
I mean, I did too, and I was watching it, and like I had heard it was, you know, supposed to be such a disturbing movie, and there are parts that are funny, and I thought maybe I was just more fucked up than I thought I was.
No.
But I mean, the dog, all right, I love the dog. And like he's chewing on the old lady's teeth, and that shit was funny. He's chasing a ball like through the blood while he's trying to kill the blonde. Like the dog's always there when he's doing these terrible things in the house. He's cleaning himself up, and the dog's like half in the grocery bag eating food and being goofy. But I mean, and then the killer himself is just, for lack of a better way to say it, so bad at his job. Like he's trying to kill the old lady and he's rolling around on the wheelchair with her. Like it's funny.
Yeah.
Sean, you messaged me about the sound, in this film as being like just a character unto itself. And I think that when I was watching it this time, one of the things I noticed that Cargill, I think he envisions his soundscape as something physical, like it's something tactile, like because
Yes.
it's not real sound, it's film sound. And he creates
Yes.
this sonic environment, almost like he's creating this acoustic Dr. Caligari expressionist funhouse that just affects our auditory senses as much as it does visually with these sweeping, elaborate camera movements.
I gotta try to remember. Acoustic Caligari, what was it, Funhouse?
Yeah, his acoustic Caligari expressionist funhouse.
John, that is fucking it in a nutshell. Holy shit.
That's awesome.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and it's just the way it presents death, and this kind of goes into the bleak comedy aspect of it, that it just presents death and the idea of death in very sort of mortal, non-spiritual terms. It's not that it's depicting violence quote unquote realistically. That's not what it's doing. It's just that it sees, similar to a lot of the stuff that was coming out of Germany that the film was kind of riffing on. It sees death as like sort of this nothing state, this kind of abyss and this void where you look at something sort of more like a traditional Helen Hunt Jackson ghost story. They're almost more optimistic by comparison.
To tie this into your This Movie Saved My Life podcast with Miles Fortune, you're saying depicting death as nothing, right? Yeah, we believe in nothing, Lebowski, the German nihilists, right? I'm thinking that they're probably big fans of Angst.
Yeah,
pretty fucking sure.
Angst and most stuff by Rainier Fassbender and
Oh my God.
yeah, they worship at the altar of those films, the nihilists do.
And that's I feel like this movie is kind of positing that the main character is like kind of one of them, like
Yeah.
that mindset, and it's making fun of it in a way, in a similar way that Lebowski makes fun of it, kind of.
Yeah, he's our serial killer in this film, who's only known as the serial killer. Yeah, he's the fourth missing member of Autobahn.
Yes, he's got to be. The sound design is absolutely, just from the opening of the movie, there's water drops, the sound of people, like a group of people walking, their feet, and then birds. And it is all of the sound design, all like the Foley, all footsteps. It's all so fucking loud in the mix. I've never heard a movie mix footsteps so loud, and it works. Like it's something unique. And then when you tie that into the score, which is by Klaus Schulze, who also went by the name Richard Wanfried, and was a krautrock pioneer, and like worked with Tangerine Dream, who I'm a big fan of, and some other krautrock groups that I'm less familiar with. But the music in this, I just was blown away. Like I would listen to the score a lot. Like I really, really, really liked it. And it added something that the movie needed, in my opinion.
Yeah, if I could just give like a shout out to like kind of tie this into like another film that was inspired by, well, for sure the taxi cab scene in this film. I think a lot of people, when they're kind of freaked out about this film by the sort of the lore behind it, I think the film that they're actually thinking of is a film called A Short Story About Killing, or a short film about killing, which is a Polish film directed by a guy named Krzysztof Kieslowski. Most people know Kieslowski as the guy who directed the Three Colors trilogy with Juliette Binoche, Blue, White, with Julie Delpy and Red. They all came out like 93, 94. And he did a series of 10 films in Poland called the Decalogue. And they're all based off of, each film is based off of one of the 10 commandments. And short film about killing is a film that is a sort of an extended version of his Thou Shalt Not Kill film. And this film came out in 1988. And as a result of this film, it ended the death penalty in Poland. Poland abolished the death penalty as a result of this film.
Holy shit.
And it has, this is like one of the, it's not a horror film. This is, bear in mind, this is, it is very disturbing. And it has a moment that like really kind of quotes Angst, the taxi cab scene in such a stark way. It is very brutal. Every person needs to see this film. It is one, I think it's up there as like one of the top 20, top 50 best films ever made. You can find it on Canopy and Criterion. But I think based on just sort of how hard hitting that film is, I think a lot of people going into Angst think that's the film that they're going to be watching, or I guess as Missy said, something more akin to Irreversible and what other films that Gaspar Noé does. But yeah, it's not. And I think having seen this, I think this was like my third time watching Angst. Yeah, it just sort of like the satire of other horror films and other serial killer films, I think really became more apparent this time.
Interesting. Ray?
I didn't think of it. Wow, this is my second viewing, and I've never considered it as a dark comedy. I don't know. Maybe I need to give it a third watch. But then again, that'd be very difficult because first time I watched it, I hated it. The second time, I just equally just hated it.
See, I didn't know you hated it, and you jumped
it's a
all over the idea
struggle.
of being on this episode. So I was
Just
like,
because, well, I mean, it's jeez. I get, you know what it is. I feel like I don't know. You know what? It reminds me. I don't know. I think I told you about this before. I had this art professor years ago who said that art is effective if you get an emotional response. He's like, if you love something or you hate something, then the person who created it was effective. And if you just walk away and go, I don't care, then they were ineffectual. So I feel like he made something that worked. I mean, because man, oh God. I just, I don't know. The dark comedy isn't there for me. Maybe maybe I'm missing it. I don't know. I get that he's ineffectual, but it's just fucking bleak.
it is. It's not pleasant. It's not a pleasant comedy by any stretch of the imagination.
It's bleak. It just paints a dark picture for mankind. And honestly, like it's if you just sat me down and had me watch that and like what was that one we watched? Inside? No, not Inside. The one with the brothers. Found.
Oh God, well, that's a
like
fucking bleak goddamn movie.
That is bleak. And like Henry and like The House that Jack built and a whole bunch of others that were just like serial killer movies. By the end, I'd probably switch my position on I'd probably reverse my position on the death penalty and be like, yeah, just kill him. Let's get these people out of our get them out of the mankind. There's no hope. Just get him out. Just get him out. Like,
anyone listening to this podcast, thinking that wow, John, Sean, and Missy are really fucked up for finding this film to be a bleak comedy. No. Ray is all of a sudden becoming the voice of reason here. No. Ray, you're becoming the voice of reason here.
Yeah, perhaps.
I feel like I understand where you're coming from. I do, because I mean, like this is called elements of horror. So there is an understanding, and I do get it that like after a while, like horror kind of deadens you to some things, or like not deadens you, it softens you to like some of the things that like we end up watching in horror movies. But the stuff that tends to like hit like more realistic to me, or like especially the serial killer stuff, really just still tends to hit me and bother me. Like I'm not one of those people that like watches like true crime or things like that. And
No, I
like
don't either.
I feel like if you're a person who likes true crime, you could probably watch this and be like, "Oh yeah, got it. Yeah, that's as terrible as I expect." But like, I feel like I think it's one of the reasons that it's one of those films that gets stuck in with people with horror, because it doesn't quite resonate as horror, because it's just it feels close to reality, at least for me. And so I'm like, because horror tends to be like somewhat outlandish or like unrealistic, if I can say that. Like even like the Jello stuff, like like Suspiria, or like not Suspiria. I'm forgetting the one where the writer is the killer and he's
Oh,
killing
Tenebrae.
people. Tenebrae, yeah, where it has this realistic element of a serial killer, but I mean it's so over the top that you're like, yeah, like that's not gonna happen. Or like when you cut off somebody's hand, they don't spray all over a fucking wall like that. Come on. But this has elements of being a lot more like going for realism that I just like I'm like, ugh, Jesus, it's just
You know,
bleak,
let's
grim.
think about this for a minute. I like this because okay. So first I'll say so I also like serial killer stuff is not my bag. It disturbs me, so I generally don't watch it. But and true crime, like I stay the fuck away from most of the time. But I feel like it definitely this being on a video nasties list, as John said, at first I was like, wait, what? But it makes sense based on the culture in the 1980s, especially in Germany, perhaps. But it was a different time, right? Like I feel like there's a
Yeah.
level of sophistication and awareness or self-awareness or meta awareness with the film going just, you know, general collective unconscious that this would play differently then. Okay. So
Yeah.
that being said, though, let's look at this because this is something that fascinates me. What Ray just said. So you could give me an Evil Dead movie where there's somebody with a fucking chain, like, if you just describe Evil Dead 2 to a Christian family that's never seen a horror movie, they're gonna think you're a fucking ghoul, right? But I mean, but we know the reality. I don't know that
Yes.
anybody would be like, I think even my parents would like, get that it's like, it's like the Three Stooges with gallons of blood. But what is it
Yeah,
that,
yeah, that's a good example, because actually my father, who's like not a horror person at all, was the first person that like one day I come wandering in a room when I was in my teens, and he's watching Evil Dead 2, and I'm like, "What's this?" And he's watching it, and I start watching it with him, and I'm like, "This is crazy." And he's like, "Yeah, but it's real funny, isn't it?" And I go, "It is funny." And I was shocked that it's still shocking to this day that it was something that he just happened to start watching on cable by himself, because he's not a horror movie person at all.
right,
Like I try to throw stuff in front of them, and they're like my parents, and they're like, no, I don't
right,
know. Like they're much more of the true crime, like criminal mindset. And like even what's it called that I started watching for your recommendation?
Hannibal.
Hannibal. I'm like, I like this, but I don't think I'd recommend it to my parents. Like even that second episode of Not Alone with the mushrooms, I was like, that I don't know why that disturbed me, but I was like, that's impressive.
Yeah.
But even that, I would be like, I don't know, I'm not going near my parents with that one. Like, oh, they can watch whatever they watch, but I'm not recommending that to them. Like but to get to your point, like I don't think angst would ever be something that they would watch. And if they did and it was on my recommendation, I that would be a hard thing to get forgiveness for.
Well, so it's a question of tone. So what I want to do is
Yeah.
what what makes so I'm going immediately to okay, so we got Evil Dead on one end of the spectrum, and let's just say Angst or Portrait of a Serial Killer Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer on the other end. And there's definitely stuff that's more extreme on either side. But what is it? I know what it is about Evil. We all know what it is about Evil Dead that makes it not disturbing, right? But what is it about, like, I love Brandon Cronenberg's Possessor. And I've seen it probably 4 or 5 times. And each time I watch it, the violence increasingly disturbs me, but not in the same way that makes me feel icky, like the movies, like what people might think Angst is, or what Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer is, or whatever. But I mean, I don't know. Like, what is it about the tone? Because I feel like maybe that's closer to a Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer than it is to an Evil Dead for sure. Maybe, but I don't know. I mean, thoughts? Anybody?
Well, I think um it's because it does feel like it could happen. Um like people I like monster movies. People as monsters are not my favorite. However, there isn't much that scares me, and the few things that creep me out are usually those kind of movies. This kind of made me think of The Strangers, and I mean, there's one point where they ask, "Why are you doing this to us?" And she says, "Because you were home." And I mean, that's how Angst was too. He just picked a random house, and
Broke into it.
because they were home. And I mean, I I think without the humor elements, at least the stuff that made me laugh, it would feel really disturbing and bleak. And I mean, it still is bleak,
Yeah.
but I don't know, the dog chewing on the teeth and stuff like that, just it lightened it. At least it lightened the tone for me.
I mean, even the deaths, like my notes, the second note I took is this a comedy? Question mark. And then drowning the brother proves it is so! Exclamation point. Because the scene was so ridiculous that
Right.
that was the moment where I'm like, okay, now it's like, okay, I get it now. I get. And his constant, like, oh, and my father did this to me, and I tore the head off the goose and drank its blood. It sounded like somebody that's like, oh yeah, you know what's really disturbing? Oh, I did this, and then I did this, and it was like, it just sounded like a little boy talking
Mhm.
like he knew shit that he knew nothing about. Like, I found myself questioning if half of what he even fucking said was real.
I did some of it probably was. I don't think all of it was. I feel like he probably
Well, isn't there that comment at the end by the specialist or psychologist that's probably appointed by the court to decide what happens to him after these events that says uh the death of his mother or the abandonment by his mother, something to that effect? And he said at the beginning that the reason he was there was
Mhm.
because he attacked and stabbed his mother. You're probably right in not believing what he says and believing anything that he states that he's done. Um, but I think that I I don't know. The way I interpreted the ineffectiveness of killing was that is like somebody who wants to attack and murder someone but doesn't know how to do it properly and so messes it up.
I also don't think he has the
Um,
balls to actually, like, well, it's not true because he does. I don't know. He
I think
doesn't.
I think I think I think what happens, especially with that open like that scene where he gets because the first thing he doesn't do, he doesn't attempt to kill the girl when she finds him. The first thing he attempts to do is get away, but he can't get out. And so, like some kind of panicked animal, he like starts killing them because, well, what else is he gonna do? Like that's the way his thought process is. He's a terrible killer, but his thought process is like, well, I messed up. I'm trapped. So obviously, what do? I kill them, and it's like that's your answer. Like you don't
But
just. And the thing is,
but he came there to
later
kill
on,
them.
he came in to kill him, but he doesn't actually start to kill them. He starts like I feel like he could have
he
killed
tries to get
all.
away.
Well,
He
but
tries
even
to get
after
away.
that, so like what you said, where he tries to get away, can't get out, so then he starts to kill them. That implies that like, oh, I can't get out, so he starts killing them. Like he starts stabbing him. He doesn't. He doesn't know.
Well,
Like he,
he panic chokes the mother, and then the girl says the mom needs the pills, so that he starts giving the pills to her. And he even mentions in his head in the dialogue, "I hope she needs to get up. I hope she's okay." And you're like, "No, she's dead, dude."
Yeah, but he just wanted to revive her so that he could see him kill the other person.
I think like he could have choked her to death, but then at the last minute he's like, "Oh wait, no, I shouldn't kill her. I should do this. It's more disturbing." Because I don't think that he had the follow through. I think that everything is kind of accidental or like really half-assed until the blonde because she's going to get away, and now like even that the frenzy is like so ridiculous that it's where the wannabe, it's like the wannabe gangster that somebody, puts a gun in his hand is like, fucking prove yourself, right? You talk all this shit, now you have to prove yourself. And that's his moment where it's like he's got no other recourse. And then he kind of embraces it, but it's like look at him sitting in the coffee shop staring at the two girls smoking, like, how should I approach them? You're not gonna approach them. Like, give me
Yeah.
a fucking break, dude. Like, I'm sorry. I'm
I,
sorry.
I think one way to think about it is that, like, um, if you think about the violence, if you think it's going to sound bizarre, but I think it plays into who he is as this character. If you think about the violence as sexual encounters and the awkwardness of
Oh,
like starting as like the beginning of sexual encounters and being like, do I do this or do I do this? Like, what do I move on to? And so, like, if you think about it as that way and like the fumblingness of it, then like it kind of could make sense for how, like, does he want to be this killer, but he doesn't know how to quite do it, so he fumbles through how to do it properly. Does that make sense?
it does. That's a really good. John, what do you think of that?
Yeah, no, that I mean that makes sense, and it just kind of compounds the fact that it's like, yeah, he's just a kid, he hasn't like finished school, and he sees himself as the way that he thinks the media might see him.
Yes.
He's so he's or he's somebody, who like us, his relationship to, this dark world of homicide has been colored largely by film. And in a way, the film kind of just sort of becomes this sort of weird meta critique on other serial killer films.
Do you think, John, because you mentioned to me, I think when I started watching it, the first thing you said in a text was that free floating camera at the beginning. Do
Yeah.
you think that has something to do with what you're talking about, or like, what's your take on that? Because I thought that was going to be the whole movie, and then it's not. It's just that's opening. So how do you read that?
Oh gosh. It just it sets the tone for us as being like this either one of two things. This free floating kind of voyeuristic kind of appeal to it, or and it's indulging in an idea that was that filmmakers at that time were always trying to experiment with and take it to the next level, which is sort of like the conscious camera, the camera as character that just sort of drops in on a world, intervenes, and then leaves. Because you notice, like, when he gets caught at the end, the camera just sort of kind of floats away.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just about as
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
about as easily it drops into the world. It's like kind of decides to come on in, float around this world, and then just leaves.
wow. I love that. I hadn't thought of that.
Kind of showing like the weird, disturbing happenstance of all of these events.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I mean, and also like if you think about something else that he says at the beginning of the film, which I think based on his age and like how easily he's caught, um, could be partial criticism of the prison system, because he's obviously like he's obviously a repeat offender with the that is knows he's going to get caught.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he messes up so much. He like he says, doesn't he say at the beginning of the film he spent half his life in jails or prisons? So he's institutionalized, which is another thing. Like, I think the part of the criticism is that, like, he says at the beginning that a doctor has talked to him about him. He says he dreams about flowers, but he can dream about whatever he wants with about what he wants to when he's awake, which I think is a criticism also, like psychiatry, or at least prison psychiatry, of these, or some elements of psychology of these people that are like, okay, tell me about your dreams, but, like, okay, dreams are free floating and can come from the subconscious wherever they want to. Like, tell me about what you're thinking about in your head while you're awake. If you're not dealing with that, then you're not dealing with who the person is on a constant basis. And obviously, whoever he is in his dreams is someone completely different from the person he is in his waking hours, which is a sadist. And, like, unfortunately, the only person that gets that is the doctor who has to diagnose him at the end of the film and then report to the court, like, yeah, he needs to be put away forever. He's never going to be better. He's a sadist. Just get rid of him, put him away. But even that might be a criticism, because, like, isn't the whole goal of the prison system and institutionalization to hopefully equate the person so that we can get them back out into society? Maybe the film has a twofold response, which is maybe there's some people we can't, or maybe that we're just not trying. Like, it might be an element of both, that, like, we're just not trying hard enough to make people better, but we're also, like, not facing the fact that there may be people that we just are not going to save, that they just need to be either put in a cage or done away with, or whatever you want to do with them, but they're not going to become better human beings no matter how hard we try. Like, maybe they're just too messed up from the jump. Like, maybe he's just had too much family trauma to ever be a regular person.
Wow.
Mhm.
I didn't mean to cause that silence. I'm sorry.
No. You know what you just made me think of? This movie came out 12 years after Stanley Kubrick's Clockwork Orange. Do you think in any way, shape, or form this movie is a response or a rebuttal? Or I don't, because
In some ways, yeah.
I almost feel
Yeah.
like maybe this is like a
Yeah.
piss take on Alex.
Maybe.
Yeah, he is kind of
Oh,
like
that's a
Alex
good
to
call.
Orange, yeah.
That's a good call.
Yeah, good.
Because
Yeah.
I
call
noticed
there.
that this guy is, like, in his head, he's very dramatic. Like, he wanted to revive the mother, the old lady in the wheelchair, not because he didn't want to kill her. He wanted her to watch him kill the daughter.
Well, that's what he
And then,
says, but is that just
well,
him being gun shy?
I don't know. But I mean, that's what he's telling us when he's putting the 3 people in the trunk too, that he wants to use his bodies to scare other people.
It's I feel like that whole dialogue about keeping the bodies and tying them to the other people and scaring them and this and that, like, I just feel like that's so ridiculous. And
But everything he does is ridiculous.
I know that, but case in point. But I'm definitely I forced myself, and also I'll bet you any money, I forced myself into this viewpoint as a form of armor, because as I'm watching it, I don't know what I'm in for, right? So I'm like, because there is an element of like, it's okay, it seems like it's going to be disturbing, and then, like, you know, you're taking the movie one step at a time, so you don't know what's in front of you, right? So that could have been my armor, and then I just like locked into it because I could, and maybe I could be reading it completely wrong. And if I am, then you're 100% correct in saying that, because he does say, like, oh, I'd rather his whole thing is it's not just killing. He wants to, like, disturb, um
I know what you mean, because I mean, the doctor at the end does diagnose him as just being a sadist. But yeah, if someone had just told him to get into like heavy metal, especially in the '80s, it could have pissed off a whole bunch of people. Or is that a criticism of German society as a whole? It's a joke. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. There's a line in Hannibal in one episode in season one, the totem pole episode. Ray, you'll get there eventually, where the killer, who's Lance Henriksen, says, "There's something beautiful about that ball of silence at a funeral, looking around and knowing that you are the reason that everybody is there." So, in other words, he's finding nourishment in other people's agony and grief, right? And one of the most disturbing books I ever read, and I wish I had not read, was seemed slightly innocuous when I read it. And Ray Zoe that we used to work with lent it to me. It was called Art That Kills, and it had chapters about Marilyn Manson and all these like, kind of like, I don't even feel like he deserved to be in this book. Nothing against him necessarily, but he's not that level of disturbing. But some of the stuff was really fucking disturbing. And there was a thing about this like underground zine in the 70s or 80s that was like fucking child killers would basically pass around. And there was a line from somebody that was like, you look at the parents grieve and like I don't even want to try to say it verbatim. I wouldn't be able to. It's been a long time since I read it, but it was basically like talking about how he finds satisfaction and nourishment and pleasure in knowing that these people will be in agony and he caused it. And I just think that's one of the most disturbing concepts I've ever fucking, because you like in you can infer that that's there when you watch serial killer movies or whatever. But to actually read somebody fucking say that, like they're
Yeah.
aware of what makes them tick, and let me tell you right now, this is it, right? So it is a disturbing thing, and that's what this guy is constantly saying. I guess I don't know if it's just me using it as a defense mechanism or what, but I just felt it was so over the top with him that it was actually making fun of that. I don't know.
It could be a bit of both. It could honestly be a bit of
It
both.
could.
I mean,
It
I
could.
think one thing to think about with this film is that we are operating from the perspective of being in today's society, and reality programming and like even that like seeing an event happen and then cutting to them having some kind of interview where they talk about what just happened and is something that's we now live in as a permanent fixture of our entertainment, and that's only been the last 30 years or so.
Yeah.
And like when this movie came out in '83, like there was some reality stuff, and I don't mean necessarily documentary films. There was some stuff that was, I mean, besides like the home improvement shows, like there was famously something that I think PBS did in the '70s that followed an actual family, but there was very little of it. Like there just wasn't the format that we get besieged with now. And to make something that has that almost documentary feel and then have like, well, I'm going to tell it from the perspective of the killer, and you're going to hear his inner monologue the entire time. Like I think we filter it through that lens now and don't necessarily catch it in the same way that they might have then. Like there certainly could be some just like dark humor involved for sure, but there also might be some of our filtering of what we understand is that now. Like I've always talked about the oh goodness shock treatment, the follow up to
Rocky Horror.
Rocky Horror, and being so shocked by it when I finally watched it because its whole focus is of the Brad and Janet character put into this soundstage that is literally a whole town, and you're either a participant on the programming or you're a member of the audience that's watching it, and it's all just reality TV. And I'm like, when was this movie made? It was made in like '82. So it just blows my mind that, like, I forget the actor guy who wrote Rocky Horror, but he also wrote this, that he could he knew that it was going to that was coming, and that was going to be a form of entertainment, that people that were going to have that focus, that would catch crowds in that way. And it just blows my mind to this day that, like, that many years ago he caught it and was like, this is the future, this is what our future is going to be. And like I said, we're so used to it now, but I mean, for an audience then in 83, like, I don't know how they would have reacted. I mean, it would have been something new to them. It would have been like, "Whoa, what the? This is interesting. Like, this is crazy." Like the whole film, we're getting his whole inner dialogue, and we're watching it as it's unfolding, and it feels very documentary filmmaking. It's very strange, at least
No,
possibly. I don't know.
that's a very interesting point. Missy, what do you think about that?
Um, I like how it puts us, like, seeing everything through his perspective. I mean, sure, he's completely warped, but it's an interesting way to tell the story. And I mean, right off the bat that he's an unreliable narrator. I mean, at least it felt that way for me. That we knew right away he was unreliable because he's telling us, about the fantasies and all this shit in his head, and then the first time he gets up the guts to try to do something, he was gonna try to strangle this cab driver with a shoelace in the taxi cab. Like, he's completely delusional and unhinged. But I think that's the point. And the movie makes you feel his anxiousness through the amping up of the sounds and all these weird extreme close-up. Like, the close-ups are creepy, like, and they're always finding flaws in people when they're doing it, like of people chewing or like smudges in makeup and um all that kind of stuff. So I think even he's aware of how awkward and unhinged he is, but the movie is trying to make you feel it through the sounds, the close-ups, all of it.
Ooh,
Like,
yeah, good
Ray keeps
call.
saying to him it felt documentary-ish. It didn't feel that way to me.
Interesting. That it definitely, I don't even think I realized that that was doing that to me, but I think you're 100% correct. I know you're correct.
Oh, I mean, it was definitely, I was picking up on that stuff right away. Because especially since a lot of my anxiety triggers through sounds and too many conflicting sounds. So I mean, like, in the very beginning, you get that long opening scene with the aerial camera, and then the dripping, and the dripping keeps getting louder, and then it starts adding in other sounds. So you get the footsteps and the keys, and all of this stuff sounds so loud, and like it feels like a building panic attack. And then it gets to all those close-ups that, like, all right, the murder and everything, when they show that didn't seem that bad. What was creeping me out was all those weird shots of tongues and chewing, and like, it made me feel anxious. And I think he the character is also feeling that.
For sure. John, thoughts?
Not much that hasn't already been said, except I'm liking, the more and more I think about it, the more and more I watch it, just sort of like I'm simultaneously more interested in what Cargill's uh critique of society is, versus like just sort of how much I'm kind of baffled by it and not even quite sure that this film even really has one. So I kind of wonder, like, really what's the purpose of this film apart from, just being like a criticism of other horror films.
I mean, which would be so 1983, right? This
Yeah.
is, and the video nasties. So you have movies like Maniac, right? William
Oh,
Lustig's
yeah.
Maniac. That is 100%. Let's make a movie and we'll make a movie that everybody will line up around the block to boycott because we'll be fucking rich, right? That's, I mean, I love the movie, but that is 100% the reason that he made that movie the way he made it. Everything about it, you know.
And people reacted in a similar way to Angst. You know, it's just it's kind of it's a bit more under the radar than me.
Yeah, yes. It's not near where it is over the top in some regards. It's not the same over the top, right? And actually, when you watch Maniac, I actually think it's more restrained. I remember seeing that for the first time, being afraid of it, and being like, "Oh, this is not what I thought that it was going to be at all." Much like this movie, but a different, you know. But that is interesting. I mean, I would also like to know what Cargill's I don't know. I'm sure somewhere there's an interview with him or there's something where we could read what his intention was or what went into this. There may be an extra on a DVD or a Blu-ray. I don't know that I'm going to, well, no, I know I'm not going to buy the movie, so I'll probably never see that unless it's on YouTube.
Right.
But I would seek it out just because now you've got me curious too. I don't know. I don't.
There is a William Friedkin film called Rampage that kind of, in some ways, is based on a serial killer that the killer in Angst might be based on.
Interesting.
You know, but other than that, you know, that's like really the only other kind of connection that I'm able to make to, you know, if not what Cargill's criticism is, you know, to just real life in general. Although I have read that Cargill has claimed that it's not really based on anyone in particular.
Missy, closing thoughts, continuing thoughts. I'm not sure. This is a deeper discussion than I thought that we were going to have, which I'm very grateful for. And John, I feel like it's a great pick. Just
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
outstanding.
glad it was picked. I mean, it wasn't what I was expecting at all, and I'm glad we watched it. I think it was a really cool movie, and I can see where it's influenced current stuff. And I mean, anybody who's feeling and just open-minded and wanting to watch something different, I thought it was a cool film. And I mean, the camera work alone will keep you engaged. I mean, at least it did for me. And it's on Tubi for free right now, and there's very few ads. I mean, I think they popped in like twice because it's a weird German film from the 80s. I mean, not a lot of people are watching it, so why put a zillion ads in it?
Yeah, that's true.
But I'm glad it was picked. I liked it.
Yeah, it's on Canopy and Mubi as well. I need to get Canopy started. That's the library system app, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to do that.
All you need is a library card, and you can rent like something like 10 or 12 movies a month.
Canopy's good
Okay.
for Giallo. Like they get
Yeah.
I've seen Giallo have some nice rotation on there.
Interesting.
And foreign. They've got a lot of stuff on foreign stuff too.
Yeah.
That movie, I mean, $1 for 3 months. It's a smaller. Well, they have a weird interface.
It's good. You can see like fallen leaves and stuff on there. There's like a lot of really kind of neat stuff you can watch.
Oh yeah, they have a lot of lot of quality
Yeah.
stuff on there. It's one of those apps that when I see it, I just don't know if I have enough time in a lifetime to watch all the stuff that's on there.
Absolutely.
I'm
If it
just like,
hadn't been for this,
wow.
I would have passed up the deal just because I would have been like $1 for 3 months, but am I going to use it? But I've made a concentrated effort now to integrate this. John, I'm going to need you to send me, like, if you could at some point, like just top 5 movies that you know of on Mubi I should watch.
Oh, sure. That's that should be pretty straightforward.
Ray, closing thoughts?
I think I've said everything I can say.
Can I tell you that I hired a acting troupe to act this movie out for your birthday next month?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so that when you on your birthday,
Oh.
when you wake up, there'll be when you hear the doorbell ring,
Oh, I'm
He's not going to
fascinated.
actually. He won't
I
actually shoot you
okay.
though.
All
But
right.
he's
My
going to eat
requirement is
sausage. He's going to eat
the
sausage
oh
right up in your grill.
well he eyeballs me like that. Okay.
Yeah.
My only requirement is he must also be bug-eyed like that guy. Like he needs to
Oh
be
yeah.
bug-eyed. If he's not bug-eyed, then I'm out.
I hired somebody we used to work with at Borders that had a old brown car and kept a lot of used Kleenex in it. He's
Oh,
perfect, right?
very
He's
nice.
perfect. He's perfect.
Very nice.
Perfect. Yeah. Thought of him the whole time. Maybe that
Oh
also
gosh, that's
diffused it a little
good.
bit. John, closing thoughts?
Yeah, what if you're a horror fan, this film is a must see. If you're a lover of films in general, be sure to check out Kieslowski's short film about killing as well. That film is essentially if Angst was real.
What is the exact title?
It's called a short film about killing. I don't know I don't know what it is in Polish, but
Oh, okay.
you know
I'll look it up.
yeah, you look at a short film about killing and it is exactly that. It's like about 80 some odd minutes, but it's one of the most powerful 80 minutes you'll ever have.
I'm a little afraid of this, but I think I will watch it.
Yeah, it's on Canopy
I'll check it out.
and Criterion.
Like that. Oh Lord.
Um, Normally we would end in Elements of Horror by saying what is next, but I don't know that we know what's next. So, I don't know. We'll find out. So until then,
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
for the Horror Vision Presents Elements of Horror, I'm Sean.
I'm Missy.
I'm Ray.
I'm John.
A pandemic of violence floods the streets of major cities as cases of the media-dubbed murder virus, MV20, soar, causing those infected to go on killing sprees. Caught in the middle, police detective Angela Miller finds her only trustworthy ally in the self-proclaimed psychic PI, Gerald Henry. As the two try to navigate the violence, they are drawn into New Age guru Abramelin Harvest's plot to heal the planet. Harvest's missive?
The world is sick, and humanity is the infection.
The cure? Murder. From the twisted mind of Sean C. Baker, author of A Collection of Desires and Shadowplay in Book 1, Kim and Jesse, comes his most vicious novel yet, Murder Virus.